Author is funded by the Pacific Northwest Writers Association, supporting writers from pen to publication since 1955. To learn more about the PNWA and their yearly conference, please go to pnwa.org. Hi, this is Bill Kenower of Author Magazine, and I'm here at the PNWA's Writers' Cottage in Gilman Village in Issaquah, Washington, with Jim Lynch, author of Truth Like the Sun. Jim, welcome to Author.
Thank you for having me.
So, Jim, I want you to think back and try to remember when the idea of story first lit up in your mind as something that was valuable, something useful just in your everyday life.
Well, I think that it probably started when my mother was reading to me as a kid in Mike Mulligan and the Steam Shovel. I just remember requesting that she read it again and again and again and again, and that it kind of had this certain power to me. You know, just that it was a picture book, but still it just played in my imagination. And then kind of the thrill of reading and interest in writing was as early as 3rd grade when my teacher read Where the Red Fern Grows to us. And that was followed by Wilson Rawls waiting for us in the library after she finished the last page. And so we had the power of not only that story, you know, of this boy and his 2 hunting dogs, but also, you know, seeing the author and connecting the book to the author and having him explain that the whole book was one long paragraph. He didn't even understand grammar and indentations. And yeah, and so it just made it all seem somewhat doable, that they're just people that are writing these things.
Boy, what a gift to a young boy who's going to go off to become a writer, because that is one of the biggest hurdles writers have to get over, which is that I could do that.
Yeah, well, and I often find that even when I go to high schools or even, you know, college classes at community colleges, people will come up and say, you know, you're the first author I've met, and they actually you know, look at it as some kind of exotic creature that they're getting a chance to meet, you know, which, you know, were maybe bizarre and deranged, but not all that exotic.
Well, of course, you're so removed from everyday life. You're just a name on a book jacket.
Yeah.
To most people.
Right.
But lo and behold.
I always take some comfort in, like, I went on a John Steinbeck binge in the last year or 2, and I read, you know, 4 or 5 Steinbecks, and then I read his letters to his editor, and I just thought it was so cool that Steinbeck was talking about all the impending doom that he felt, and that all the sense of failure that he was anticipating when he was writing East of Eden. You know, I mean, he was already, you know, on his way to the Nobel Prize, and think what you will of Steinbeck, but still. The guy in the prime of his career having the insecurities that an unpublished novelist has.
Humility is key, because there is a sense, one of the things I always, to me this is how it is, but I feel like writing is a relationship with your imagination, and that may sound woo-woo to you, but I feel like you can't take, little me can't take full credit for what the imagination brings to me.
Yeah,
does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, I like that. I've never thought of it that way. But one of the ways that I do think about it, though, is just that I'm still constantly curious as to how you get into the zone when you're writing well.
Yeah.
You know, that's just like a daily exploration for me, and I just crave the time when it usually comes like about an hour or 2 hours into it.
You've broken yourself down.
Yeah, when you suddenly you forget you're working, you forget you're writing, you're just in this story and you're writing at your best, and it's like, you know, being a kid running through a field. It's easy and free, but it only seems to come, those exhilarating bursts only seem to come if you just kind of force yourself to have a rhythm of writing, you know, preferably every day, or at least thinking about what you're working on every day. I don't subscribe to the fact that you have to write every day. I think, though, that if you have a big project, you have to keep in touch with it, preferably every day, even if it's thinking about it before you fall asleep.
Yeah, I agree, because there is a story, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, is like a flow, like a river.
Yeah.
And you have to re-enter that stream each time you write, don't you? Because it can be in your head, but you do have to re-enter it and find it again each day.
Well, I kind of look at it as you know, small level hypnosis to some degree.
It is.
Because in that, and I also find that essentially is what you have to do to the reader. And I was a journalist for a long time, and so I would juggle journalism with writing fiction, and one of the things, you know, and they're very starkly different.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And you know, with journalism, there's all this urgency of telling the reader as much as they need to know as quickly as you can, preferably before it jumps to the inside of the paper. And with fiction, I really do look at it as you know, you have to hypnotize the reader, and you have to create momentum, but you also have to, you know, seduce them. You have to hypnotize them into this story. And I find that it's a very similar state of mind that I have to get into to believe in the story and all that, and to write it.
We were talking earlier about the business of being an author, which often involves marketing or not marketing. And we were talking about, you have a very somewhat unusual approach these days in that you really don't deal with the marketing end of it, which is anathema to a lot of what we hear being preached by publishers and...
Right. Yeah, I do see it as opposed to marketing and publicity, I kind of look at it as explaining. You know, when I first got into this, I was nervous about the idea of getting up and talking about my books and so on. And then I suddenly realized, well, who the hell else is going to talk about it? You know, who else is going to explain what I've done,
right,
or you know, put it in perspective.
Right.
And so I don't mind doing that, and that can actually be great fun. And it's also, you know, people that come out to see readers, to see writers, tend to be very intense readers.
Yes. And
so it's a wonderful connection in that regard. Even if it's a small group of people that I'm meeting, these people that, you know, books are a big part of their world.
Yeah. I think it's great for a writer to hear the enthusiasm of their readers, to remember that it's not just about sales and awards, that you actually are reaching human beings, or putting down some great sentences, that you're actually connecting to other strangers out there.
Right. I mean, some of my favorite readers, or, you know, so-called fans I've run into, you know, have never bought one of my books. They're all from the library,
right,
you know, or they'll tell me, yeah, we bought one copy and all 14 of, you know, my extended family read it. And you know, as a writer, you just hope that people will enjoy the story. I mean, that's plenty of flattery and reassurance, you know, from where I'm coming from.
All right, Jim, well, I've got one more question for you.
Okay.
And what I'd like you to do is finish the sentence for me. If writing has taught me anything, it's taught me what?
Empathy?
Empathy.
Empathy.
Yeah.
Well, I just find that, you know, I think I was always an empathetic person. At least, you know, how do you compare your own empathy?
Right.
But there's something about writing novels and writing characters that that I really enjoy. That almost feels like an honor, even though I'm creating these characters, but I get to inhabit them. And so, you know, I wrote through the head of a kind of brilliant 13-year-old boy, and it was thrilling to be in there. And I wrote through the head of a, you know, 23-year-old Border Patrol agent who's 6'8" and highly dyslexic, and he was fascinating. And so and then some of the elderly women that I've created, I really enjoyed, that are very different than me, and I think that it's a process or a trait that I think is kind of essential for writing fiction. And I meet a lot of people who, when I say that I think that that's kind of a critical ingredient, you know, you not only have to be able to write some nice sentences, but you have to be curious what it's like to be in other people.